We were 2 hours into the drive when the rain started. Not the gentle kind that makes you feel nostalgic, but the type that drums on the windshield like it's trying to punch through, sinking with the low hum of the tires against the wet asphalt. In the back seat, laughter exploded again, hers followed closely by his. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could already tell she was leaning in too close, her voice that special register she used when she wanted to be noticed. When we left the city that morning, I had a feeling something was off. Not a suspicion. A feeling. Like a low current running under your skin, you don't see it, but it's there, waiting to jolt. She touched my shoulder at the gas station. Said I looked tense. I told her we had another 2 hours to go and not to worry. She smiled, turned to Brad, and whispered something that made him shake his head with that quiet, smug grin that said he was more amused than surprised. They'd always had this odd chemistry. Emily didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she didn't care. She was always occupied, documenting everything, taking photos of raindrops on windows, zooming in on tree bark like it was art. She existed in the periphery of the trip. She was background noise. The cabin was bigger than I expected. 3 floors. Rustic, but too clean to be authentic. There was a faint scent of cinnamon and wood polish that clung to everything. It was supposed to be a relaxing long weekend, wine, card games, hikes, a reset. Instead, it was the fuse. The kind that doesn't sizzle. The kind that silently burns down to something devastating. The first night passed without incident. The second was the turning point. We were sitting by the fire, the 4 of us, blankets and glasses of wine. The conversation turned wild, ghost stories, near-death experiences, weird bucket list confessions. Then she said it. If you could switch lives with anyone in this room for one night, who would it be? There was a pause. I half-laughed, thinking it was just another of her probing, wine-soaked hypotheticals. Emily said something forgettable. Brad said something sarcastic. But then my wife, let's call her Lauren, looked directly at Brad and said, I think I'd like to be you. You look like you sleep well. She tilted her head. Very well. Brad didn't blink. That's a strange way to say you want to crawl into my skin. No, she said, I think I'd be more interested in what you'd do with mine. Emily shifted uncomfortably. I laughed dry and sharp. What's that supposed to mean? She turned to me, lips curled just slightly, the wine catching in the curve of her glass. Just playing, she said. You get so sensitive when I flirt. There was no punchline. No chuckle to soften it. Just that look between her and Brad, quick, hot, undeniable. Later that night, when we were cleaning up, she asked if I could take the trash out to the bins down the hill. I did. 5 minutes, maybe 7. When I came back, the 3 of them were back at the fireplace, but something in the air had shifted. The way Brad looked at me, suddenly guarded. The way Emily avoided my eyes. And Lauren, she looked refreshed. Like someone who had just made a decision and found it satisfying. Nothing was said until much later when the wine bottle had emptied and Lauren stood up and said, let's play a real game. We all looked up. She walked over to the window, drew the curtain shut. My husband and I were traveling with another couple, she said slowly, and that night, our wives suddenly suggested swapping partners. She looked straight at me, daring me to react. I looked at the other husband, she continued, nodding at Brad, and we. She didn't finish. She just smiled. Like a queen laying down her card in the final hand. I looked at Brad. And for the first time, he looked away. And that was the exact second I knew everything was about to change. I didn't say a word that night. Not when we all awkwardly shuffled off to our rooms, not when Lauren kissed me on the cheek and whispered goodnight like nothing about what she'd said was bizarre. I lay in bed staring at the wooden beams on the ceiling, counting every creak in the floor above where I assumed Brad and Emily were already asleep. But I knew better. That silence had weight. That kind of silence doesn't just happen. It was built on something. Something wrong. I didn't sleep. I waited. I listened. At around 2:30 a.m. I heard movement. A door. Quiet footsteps across the hall. Then, nothing. Just the subtle rustling of sheets through the thin cabin walls. It was barely audible, but it was there. And then a faint laugh, hers. Soft. Controlled. Like it was meant to stay hidden. But it didn't. It reached me like a whisper through a crack in the floorboards. I got up, walked to the hallway, and stood there barefoot on the cold wood. I didn't go to the door. I didn't want to burst into something. Not yet. I wanted to be wrong. The next morning, Lauren was radiant. She made coffee like we were on our honeymoon, humming a song she never liked before. She handed me a mug and kissed me on the temple like it was habit, not affection. Brad came down a few minutes later, hair wet from a shower, eyes bloodshot. He looked at me and mumbled morning, and that was it. But Emily was different. She wouldn't look at anyone. She stayed out on the porch most of the morning, wrapped in a blanket, just watching the woods. When I brought her coffee, she barely mumbled a thank you. Around noon, we decided to go hiking. It was supposed to be a group thing, but Emily bailed. Said she had a headache. So it was the 3 of us. I stayed a few paces behind Lauren and Brad. Watched the way she walked beside him, too close, touching his arm when she almost tripped, laughing like a teenager with a crush. Brad didn't even try to be subtle. When I caught his eyes, he didn't look guilty. He looked indifferent. That was the worst part. Like I was already out of the picture. After we got back, Emily was gone. We panicked for a moment, thought maybe she'd gone into town. Lauren was oddly quiet about it, and Brad looked mildly annoyed, like someone had left the table before dessert. An hour later, Emily returned, no explanation, no details, just locked herself in the room and wouldn't come out for dinner. Later that night, after another bottle of wine and more of Lauren's cryptic flirting, it finally came to a head. I pulled her into the hallway. "What are you doing?" I asked. She tilted her head like I was speaking a foreign language. "What do you mean? Don't insult me. Last night. The joke you made. The way you've been acting around Brad. Do you think I don't see it?" She laughed. Not nervously, mockingly. "You really are insecure. Are you sleeping with him?" Silence. But not the kind where someone's thinking. The kind where someone's deciding whether to keep up a lie or let it slip. She didn't say no. She just shrugged. "Does it matter?" she said, voice flat. "You've been boring for months." That hit harder than anything else. Not because it was true, but because she meant it. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even emotional. She was done, and she wanted me to know it. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, out the door, into the cold air where the trees loomed like silent witnesses. And in that moment I realized I wasn't part of her life anymore. I was a leftover. A placeholder. Whatever was coming next, I was no longer a participant. I was an obstacle. The next morning, the air inside the cabin felt stale, thick with something unspoken but undeniable. No one said anything about the night before. No one mentioned the argument in the hallway. Brad avoided me entirely, taking his coffee outside and sitting in the same chair Emily had occupied the day before. Lauren acted like everything was fine, flitting around the kitchen, cleaning up imaginary messes, asking if we wanted pancakes like we were some happy little family. Emily came downstairs around noon, dressed like she hadn't slept, hair messy, hoodie zipped up to her throat. Her eyes met mine just briefly, and in that second I saw it, the raw truth. She knew. She knew everything. Maybe not the details, but enough. And more than that, she looked scared. Not of me. Of what was unraveling around us. Lauren announced she wanted to go into town to check out the local antique shop, something she'd never had interest in before. She invited Brad to come with her, said they could grab lunch too. Brad looked at me for the first time in 2 days and waited. Waited to see what I'd do. I didn't say no. Instead, I said I'd stay back and make sure Emily was okay. Brad and Lauren left like they were just two old friends on a casual outing. But I knew they wouldn't be back for hours. And they weren't going to be looking at antique clocks. Once the car pulled out, I finally sat across from Emily at the kitchen table. The silence between us stretched so long I thought it might never break. Then she spoke, softly, like she'd rehearsed it 100 times in her head. "They slept together. 2 nights ago." I heard them. My stomach didn't drop. It twisted. It coiled like something alive inside me that wanted out. I nodded slowly. "I thought so." Emily looked like she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she got up, grabbed a piece of paper, and unfolded it. "He wrote this. I found it in his bag. I wasn't going to show you, but you deserve to know." It wasn't long. A scribbled note, the kind someone writes fast, under pressure. She says she's not going back to him. Says we can do this after the weekend. Thinks he won't fight it. I'm not sure. But she's serious. I think she's serious. I sat in stunned silence, rereading those words until they blurred together. My pulse thudded in my throat. She was planning to leave me. Here. After this trip. Not after a talk, not after a fight, just after. The timing of it all was so surgical, so deliberate. Get me up here, away from the city, away from friends, isolate me, break the news when there's nowhere to go. "I'm sorry," Emily said. But I wasn't angry at her. Not even at Brad. Not really. There was only one person who had pulled every string, played every piece. Lauren. That night, they came back late. Laughing. Holding bags from the store. She tossed a small brass bell on the table and said, "Found this for the mantle." Cute, right? I didn't respond. Emily went straight to her room without a word. Brad lingered, but only for a second, then followed. And Lauren? She poured herself a glass of wine and sat beside me on the couch like everything was normal. "You're quiet," she said. "I read the note," I replied. She paused just for a second. Then, "So? That was it?" No denial. No panic. Just that single word, served cold. "So you're just going to throw it all away?" I asked. She leaned back, eyes on the fireplace. "It's already thrown." There wasn't sadness in her voice. Not regret. Just finality. And I realized then this trip wasn't about escape. It was her execution plan. And I'd walked right into it, The cabin felt smaller that night, like the walls were pulling inward, like the place itself couldn't bear to contain what was happening inside it. I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. Sleep would have meant accepting it, letting it settle. And I wasn't ready for that. Around 3 a.m. I stepped outside. The forest was pitch black, only the moon cutting through the trees in thin, broken lines. The wind was sharp, slicing through my shirt like it wanted me to feel something deeper. I didn't know what I was doing out there, just walking around the side of the cabin like maybe fresh air could unpoison what I'd taken in. But then I heard it. 2 voices. Low. One male, one female. Just inside the guest room window. I stopped. The curtains were only half closed, just a sliver of the room visible from where I stood. I could see Brad pacing, shirtless. I couldn't see her, but I heard her voice, Lauren. Tense, irritated. No, I'm not dragging it out anymore, she snapped. He's not even reacting. It's like he's not there anymore. It's creepy. Brad said something too soft for me to hear. Then Lauren again. I thought this would be cleaner. But he's just sitting there. Like he's waiting for something. She sounded angry. Not guilty. Not torn. Angry. As if my silence had somehow robbed her of the drama she was hoping for. Then she said something I'll never forget. If he doesn't say anything by tomorrow, I'm going to push it. I don't care if it blows up. I want it done. I backed away. Quiet. Careful. Like I was the one trespassing. Inside, I sat on the couch in the dark, staring at the cold ashes in the fireplace. I didn't move for hours. Just sat with that line playing over and over in my head. I want it done. By morning, everything felt too still. The others trickled into the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. Lauren was last, still in pajamas, sipping coffee like this was just another quiet day in the woods. I watched her from the corner of my eye, watched the way she moved, precise, deliberate, like a performer hitting her marks. I could feel it coming. The push. The final blow. She waited until lunch. That's when she made her move. Mark, she said suddenly while we were sitting on the deck, I think we should talk. Alone. Brad and Emily both froze. No one said a word. Lauren stood and walked toward the trail behind the cabin, not looking back. I followed. We didn't speak until we were a good distance into the trees where the others couldn't hear. She turned to me and crossed her arms. I want to end this, she said like she was canceling a subscription. I figured. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy. And frankly, I don't think you have either. I tilted my head. That's funny. Because I wasn't the one sneaking around in the middle of the night. She rolled her eyes. Oh please. Don't act like this is some grand betrayal. You've been emotionally checked out for a long time. You don't challenge me. You don't inspire anything in me. I stared at her. You planned this whole trip just to dump me here. Her lips twitched. I wanted a clean break. A weekend away to talk like adults. But you just sat there like a ghost. So you slept with him. During our adult talk weekend. She didn't flinch. Brad makes me feel alive. He listens. He sees me. I almost laughed. Does he know you're using him as a getaway car? Don't be dramatic, she snapped. But she looked shaken now. Like I'd hit a nerve. Like she expected me to yell, break something, storm off, not stand there calmly, holding up her lies like a mirror. I know about the note, I said. Now she flinched. Just barely. I know you told him we're done after this weekend. That you expected me not to fight it. She was silent for a long moment. Then she turned and with a voice colder than anything I'd ever heard from her, she said. Because I knew you wouldn't. And with that she walked back to the cabin, leaving me there, alone in the trees, with nothing but those words echoing around me. And the terrifying thing was, she was right. I didn't go back inside for a long time. I sat on a rock near the creek behind the cabin, the water moving steadily like it didn't care whose world had just shattered. My world had. But I wasn't breaking the way she wanted me to. I wasn't screaming, crying, pleading. I was observing, and that made me dangerous in a way she hadn't predicted. When I finally returned, Lauren was at the kitchen counter, laughing at something Brad had said. Emily was gone again, probably upstairs, probably burying herself under blankets like they could hide her from what this place had become. Brad glanced at me, measuring my expression, probably wondering if I'd punch him or pretend everything was fine. I gave him nothing. You okay? Lauren asked, voice sugar-coated. She was trying to read me, looking for some sign she still had the upper hand. Fine, I said. We should leave tomorrow morning. She blinked. Excuse me. I think the trip's over. Let's just call it. She forced a chuckle. You're being dramatic. No. I'm giving you what you want. You said you wanted it done. So it's done. There was something in her eyes then. Not relief. Not satisfaction. It was almost disappointment. Like the performance she'd rehearsed for days had ended without applause. Brad stepped in, too casual. Maybe we all need to cool off. No reason to ruin a perfectly good weekend. I looked at him. You're not part of this. He didn't like that. He leaned forward, dropping the friendly act. You really think this is just about you? I raised my eyebrows. Oh, you think she's going to stay with you? Lauren interrupted sharply. Don't turn this into a circus. No, let's talk about it, I said, still calm. You think this ends with the two of you walking off into the sunset? She'll chew you up the moment you stop being useful. You're just the next warm body in the relay. Brad stood up, chest puffed, like he was gearing for some kind of confrontation. But I didn't budge. You want her? I said, voice low. Take her. Enjoy the mess that comes with her. Lauren looked genuinely offended, as if I just insulted royalty. You're pathetic, she said, venom finally showing. Maybe, I replied. But at least I didn't have to lie to crawl into someone's bed. Brad moved like he might say something, but then Lauren grabbed his arm and pulled him away, retreating like it was beneath her. She didn't win. She didn't get her meltdown. And that's what infuriated her most. That night, the silence returned, heavier than before. Emily came downstairs while I was nursing a beer on the porch. She sat next to me without saying a word, and we listened to the woods for a long time. Then she whispered, I think we should leave. Together. I didn't ask what she meant. I just nodded. Lauren had her scene all planned out. The dramatic exit. The guilt trip. The chance to play victim and heroine in the same story. Instead, I was going to give her what she feared most, no reaction, no resistance, just absence. Because sometimes silence is louder than any scream. Emily and I packed early while the rest of the cabin still slept. The sun hadn't fully risen, but enough light crept through the trees to guide us. We didn't speak much, there was nothing left to explain. Our bags were already halfway to the car when we heard the cabin door creak open. Lauren stood there in one of Brad's flannels, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee like she was the lady of some peaceful manor. When she saw the suitcases, the calm dropped from her face like a mask falling to the floor. You're leaving, she said, stepping forward. I zipped my duffel. Yeah. That's it? Just sneaking off like a coward. You wanted this, I said, not turning around. You got it. Emily didn't say a word. She opened the passenger door and climbed in, folding herself small like she didn't want to be part of the wreckage anymore. Lauren came closer. You really think she's your ally in this? She's just running from him, the way you're running from me. I turned. For the first time, I looked her in the eye and said what had been circling my head for days. I'm not running. I'm leaving. Big difference. Brad emerged behind her then, half-dressed, squinting like the light offended him. He spotted the bags and sighed like we were being unreasonable, like we were the ones breaking something sacred. You're just going to drive off, he called out. Emily leaned across the seat and said, not loudly but with finality, yes. Before I start hating you more than I already do. Brad looked at Lauren like she was supposed to say something, fix something, but she just watched me. Calculating. Maybe trying to guess what my next move would be. I opened the driver's door, tossed in the last bag. She stepped closer, voice lower now. You really think this makes you the bigger person? I looked at her. Really looked. No. But it makes me free. I got in and started the engine. As we pulled out of the driveway, she didn't chase us. Didn't shout. Didn't cry. She just stood there, shrinking in the rearview mirror, that mug still in her hand, like she couldn't quite believe the story didn't end the way she'd written it. The road twisted through the woods and the silence between me and Emily wasn't awkward, it was clean. Like air after a storm. We drove for almost an hour before either of us spoke. She manipulated all of us, Emily finally said. I nodded. Yeah. But she didn't get what she wanted. What did she want? I thought about that. To hurt me enough that I'd fall apart in front of her. So she could pretend to be the strong one. Emily stared out the window. She doesn't know how to be strong without stepping on someone else. We stopped at a diner in a small town, got coffee and eggs, sat by a window where we could see the car just in case Brad tried something stupid. He didn't. As we sat there, not as a couple, not even as friends, just two people who survived the same storm, I realized something. It wasn't just about Lauren. Or Brad. Or even the betrayal. It was about rediscovering the power of walking away. Quietly. Fully. Without needing to be understood. And that was something none of them had ever expected. We checked into separate rooms at a roadside inn just off the highway, a tired little place where the walls were thin and the silence between them even thinner. Emily and I barely spoke after the diner. It wasn't coldness, it was fatigue. The kind of deep, soul-level weariness that doesn't come from lack of sleep but from knowing the foundation you stood on was never real. That night, I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, wondering how many others had passed through this room after their lives had fallen apart. I imagined ghosts of broken couples, hollow conversations echoing through the drywall. And somewhere in that spiral, my phone buzzed. It was her. Lauren. 3 messages. Where are you? You're really doing this? This is how you end it? I didn't answer. I put the phone face down. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. I thought you were stronger than this. Still, I said nothing. Then, a photo. Her, standing outside the cabin, suitcase at her feet, face hard, eyes dry. He left. I told him I wasn't ready. I was wrong about everything. There it was. The next act. The sudden rewrite. Brad cast out. Me invited back in. But I'd already read the script. The door to my room knocked just once. I opened it, thinking maybe she'd shown up, somehow found us. But it was Emily, hair pulled back, wrapped in one of the motel's rough blankets. I can't sleep, she said. Mind if I sit? I stepped aside, letting her in. She sat on the edge of the bed, quiet, her eyes scanning the room like it held answers to things we'd never asked. She texted me too, Emily whispered. I looked at her. What did she say? That Brad's a coward. That she only went along with it to test you. That she's the real victim. We both let out something between a laugh and a sigh. She thinks this is salvageable, I said. She thinks a few apologies and some fresh lies will glue the pieces back. Emily nodded. That's because she doesn't understand people. She understands control. And that was it. That sentence stuck with me the rest of the night. Lauren didn't lose me because she cheated. She lost me because she thought I was a character in her story, someone she could rewrite, redirect, reboot. And when I stopped playing my role, her entire world lost shape. The next morning, I sent her one message. You lied. You plotted. You broke things for fun. Now sit with the ending you wrote. I blocked her after that. On everything. No ceremony. No final word. Emily and I left the motel a few hours later, heading back to the city, not together, just side by side. I dropped her at her sister's apartment. We didn't promise to stay in touch. There was no teary goodbye. Just a mutual nod, a silent agreement that sometimes surviving something together doesn't mean you have to carry it with you forever. And as I drove off, the sun finally broke through the clouds. It wasn't redemption, but it was light. The return to the city felt surreal, like stepping back into a life that had already moved on without me. The streets were the same, the buildings unchanged, but I wasn't. I walked into our apartment, my apartment now, and it felt like a stranger's place. Everything was where it should be, but nothing belonged. She hadn't come back yet. Her things were still scattered, a pair of heels under the couch, her perfume on the dresser, a mug with lipstick on the rim beside the sink. All of it felt like debris from a storm that had passed, not precious, not nostalgic. Just remnants. I didn't touch anything for hours. Just stood in the living room letting the silence soak in. No footsteps. No passive-aggressive humming from the kitchen. No presence orchestrating the space like she was always in control of its atmosphere. It was mine now. Hollow and honest. Later that evening, I opened the drawer where she kept old notebooks and found one labeled plans. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside were pages and pages of half-thoughts, to-do lists, mood boards, even scribbled timelines of our future. But the more I read, the less I recognized myself in it. She had notes like, if things don't change by September, push conversation. Start separating finances quietly. Check housing options near Brad's. Mark won't fight. Use that. Keep it civil, keep the image clean. It wasn't just betrayal, it was strategy. I was a piece on a board. A role in her scheme. The relationship had ended in her mind long before she gave me the courtesy of knowing. That night, she finally came back. I heard the key in the door, slow, cautious. She stepped in like someone entering a crime scene. I didn't move. Just stood in the hallway and waited. She looked at me. Dressed nicely. Face composed. I came to get my things. I nodded. There where you left them. A pause. She was expecting me to yell. Or cry. Or plead. The silence unsettled her more than any outburst would have. You blocked me. I had nothing left to say. She looked at the walls, the furniture, the memories we'd once called a home. You think you're better than me now? She asked, with a bitter edge. No, I said. But I know I'm not you. And that's enough. Something flickered in her face. Not regret, frustration. Like her plan had derailed in the final act. I didn't mean for it to go this way. You meant everything. You wrote the ending. You cast the roles. You just hated the way the audience reacted. She flinched. That one hit. She packed in silence. No pleading. No performance. Just the quiet dismantling of a life she'd already hollowed out long ago. When she finally stood at the door, suitcase in hand, she turned one last time. You won't find someone who puts up with you like I did. I almost laughed. That's the whole point. And then she left. No slamming door. No dramatic exit. Just absence. And this time it was beautiful. The following weeks passed in a strange blur, not chaotic, not heavy. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows after the last bomb's gone off, when all that's left is smoke and questions that don't need answers anymore. I started noticing things. The way sunlight hit the living room floor in the morning. The sound of the neighbor's dog scratching at the door. The absence of constant correction, passive-aggressive sighs, or the little manipulations she used to lace into our everyday life like it was a kind of seasoning. Without her there, the apartment didn't feel lonely. It felt honest. She tried to reach out a few times, burner numbers, fake email accounts. She even had a mutual friend ask if I'd calm down. Calm down. As if she thought I was just acting out like a kid having a tantrum after losing a toy. But the truth was I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't anything. That was the real wound she never saw coming. I didn't respond to any of it. And that silence? It was surgical. It cut deeper than any of her dramatics ever could. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after she left, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo, a printed snapshot of her and Brad standing in front of a restaurant I didn't recognize. She was smiling, hand on his chest. He looked tired, beaten down in a way I wasn't surprised to see. No note. Just the picture. She wanted me to see it. She wanted to own the ending, to brand it with one last, see what you lost. But instead I laughed. Not out of pain. Not even bitterness. Just disbelief at how far she was willing to go to feel like the architect of something meaningful. Later that night, Emily texted me just once. No drama. No backstory. Just, he moved out. She's trying to get in touch with me now. I'm done. I replied. Good. We're all done now. And we were. That weekend I took a drive. No destination. Just the road, some old music, and air that didn't feel like it was suffocating me anymore. Somewhere outside the city, I pulled off near a lake, parked, and walked to the water's edge. There was no metaphor in it. No need to throw a stone and watch it skip like some symbolic release. I just stood there and breathed. And that breath? That moment? It was the first time in months I remembered what peace felt like. Weeks turned into a couple of months, and life didn't explode with revelations or grand transformations. It just settled. The kind of settling that doesn't feel like defeat, but like finally sitting down after standing too long in a place you didn't belong. I got rid of things slowly. Her art books. Her extra phone charger. That hideous green throw blanket she insisted gave the apartment texture. Every item was a reminder of a performance I'd been cast into without reading the script. With each thing gone, the place got lighter, and so did I. People started to ask questions. Friends. Family. Some were shocked. Others less so. She always had this strange intensity, one of my cousins said. She was magnetic, another friend told me. But in a way that made you worry what would happen if she turned it off. The best comment came from an old friend I hadn't seen in years. After catching up over coffee, he said, "You look like you're no longer walking on glass." That's when it hit me. That was exactly what it had been, not a marriage, but a maze of emotional landmines where every step was measured and every word weighed. I wasn't free because I left. I was free because I finally realized I'd been trapped. One evening I got a letter. Handwritten. No name on the envelope, but I recognized the handwriting. Her loops, her slanted ease. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside, a short note. I think about what we had. I think about what I broke. I still don't understand why you never yelled. Why you never fought me for it. That silence haunts me more than anything else. I hope you're well. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I folded the letter once, placed it in the drawer of my desk, and never read it again. Not because I was bitter. Not because I didn't believe her. But because it didn't matter anymore. That chapter had closed. Not slammed. Not burned. Just closed. And sometimes closure isn't a confrontation or a comeback, it's the quiet certainty that you're no longer waiting for anything from someone who gave you less than you deserved. I've started running in the mornings. Not for fitness. For clarity. I meet people now with no stories trailing behind me like anchors. I sleep better. I cook more. I laugh genuinely. And once in a while, I think about those 4 days in the cabin, the betrayal, the tension, the unraveling of it all. But not with pain. I think of it like a fire alarm. Loud, jarring, but necessary. Because sometimes the only way to leave a burning house is to finally hear the alarm and walk out before the whole thing collapses. To anyone reading this who's standing in that same fire, confused, betrayed, frozen in place, I'll say this. You don't need their apology. You don't need the regret. You need the door. Open it. And walk out.